What's going on? What's going on? Damn, I'm on my way home. Finally got my damn food. Super J. Let's get back on some it's like I said before, man, this whole this been Terrence Crawford week. You know what I mean? Pretty much most of the talk this week when it's come to boxing for the most part has been about Terrence Crawford. And not necessarily in the best light for the most part. Keith Thurman, Terrence Crawford's people basically came out and I guess they said that supposedly, this is quote what Bomac says, and this is what I guess Terrence Crawford has said, that supposedly, not Earl Spence, that Keith Thurman requested $10 million in order to fight in order to fight Terrence Crawford. I'm just kind of voicing my opinion on that. Number one, we don't know if that was really the number that was put out there. It was 10 million. The first time I heard that 10 million was on the Boxing Voice, where just a regular person, on the live chat just put that out. And for whatever reason, some people just started just running with that as if it was the real number. So I'm not even sure if that's necessarily what the case is. But before we even get into the 10 million, people need to remember that Bomac got onto the Boxing Voice before anything came out about any money, before any kind of offer or anything was requested, just off the fact when the interview had come out that Keith Thurman was saying that he wanted to fight Terrence Crawford. Bomac came out and said that fight's not worth it, that he just lost his belt, that he's no longer he doesn't bring anything to the table, and that's not a fight they're looking at all. So they turned that fight off the rip. So people need to remember that part, that fight wasn't happening regardless. They turned it down off the rip. It wasn't like, oh, this guy wants to fight me, so since he wants to fight me, let's let's see what we can offer him. Let's see what he might be able to take. That's not what happened with that particular situation. And they also said that Kell Brooks is something that they're not looking at either, that he doesn't see Kell Brooks as a viable option. But like I said previously before, what's his name? Bob Arum was still talking about doing that fight, so maybe that fight's still gonna be made anyway, regardless. Which I don't think that fight's gonna be made either. So he said that those two fighters don't bring anything to the table. All this stuff was said before that 10 mil thing even became a topic, right? Now, when he says that, 10 million is way too high, and that he requested that $10 million. And it's $10 million that he knows he's not going to get, and that he said that, he can't, his promoter, he doesn't have a promoter, and that Al Heyman isn't putting up any kind of money for no fights. That's one of the most moronic, most idiotic, one of the most dumbest, stupidest things I've ever heard in my effing life. Anybody that knows boxing understands what Al Heyman has done in this game. Anybody that knows boxing understands how big Al Heyman is in this game. Everybody knows that he's been part of the biggest fights in the history of boxing. Most of them. And he's been able to come up with money for all those big fights. A fight like this is minuscule. This is nothing if that was the case. Because the reality of the situation is, if they're willing to let Terrence Crawford go to PBC, Al Heyman will pull out that money, and he'll make that fight happen. Absolutely, 100%. It'll 100% happen. But they're not letting Terrence Crawford go fight on PBC. So it's not a situation where he would be putting up the money, because you're not fighting on his platform at all. So why would exactly we bring up the money? It doesn't make any sense. And Terrence Crawford says that, they need to, send him a real offer that he knows that he'll take. But the thing with that is that you're the A side. Your promoter would be the one that would be setting up the event. Your promoter would be picking the location. It would be on your network. Everything's on your side, so you're the one actually who's supposed to be making the offer anyway. So if you believe that, hey, we could give you 6, we could give you 7, you're supposed to counter offer him and say, yo, this is the amount that we could possibly give to you if you want to do this fight. This is what we can do. Or we can do this amount of money, then we can do a percentile when it comes to the pay-per-views. Because the thing is that when Keith Thurman puts out a number like that, they're gonna put out a number like that because they understand what they could generate from a fight like that. They understand, like, hey, if we had Keith Thurman versus Terrence Crawford on Fox, these are the numbers we're gonna be able to generate when it comes to pay-per-views. When it comes to shoulder programming, this is how much we're gonna be able to get from our fighters from their parts over there they get from the shoulder programming, TV rights or whatever it is. They understand this is the amount of money that we're gonna be able to make from the sponsors. You don't need the crowd for the sponsors. The sponsors are there. They got their stickers on the floor. You know what I'm saying? They're being shouted out in between stuff. That's where all that's coming from. And you can still make money off merch by selling things online. So even without the gate, they still understand what they're gonna be able to generate and what they're gonna be able to make. So especially for someone like a Keith Thurman, when he's gonna go to a different network like that, yeah, they're gonna want a certain amount of money. You're basically, and if you could get it up front, it would be even better. Just due to the fact that someone like a Bob Arum is known for robbing fighters. You know, Miguel Cotto lawsuit, Oscar De La Hoya lawsuit, Floyd Mayweather lawsuit. You know, and the list actually just goes on and on and on and on. Mikey Garcia lawsuit. And the list goes on and on and on and on. You know, where he's owed people money. You know what I'm saying? So you could do a pay-per-view, you know, the money's come in, he's supposed to give you $8 million, but he might only give you $4 or $5. So now you got to go into litigation in order to get the rest of your money. And you're not trying to go into litigation with somebody for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years unnecessarily. If you can avoid that. You know, especially when everything is under the control of this other side. So, you know, that's one of the things. But the main thing is that they understand how much they would generate from a fight like that. You know, and I know a lot of people might say, hey, but he only made $8 million versus Manny Pacquiao. Minimum he made was $8 million. Because they'll have their regular purse, whether it might be $2.5 million or $3 million, then they'll have their full guarantees. Like, we're guaranteed to, you know, you're guaranteed at least $8 million. He was guaranteed at least $8 million. Manny Pacquiao was guaranteed at least $20 million. Those were their guarantees. Manny Pacquiao's actual purse is only $10 million, but he was guaranteed $20 million for both the Adrian Broner fight and for the Keith Thurman fight. And they said even with the Adrian Broner fight, Adrian Broner ended up clearing $10 million from that fight. Out of when everything came in, he ended up clearing over $10 million. Because you have to understand, when it comes to the PBC fighters, a lot of the money that usually would go to the promoter, it goes to them. And most of them don't have promoters. So that 30% that usually would go to Bob Arum doesn't go to Bob Arum. It goes to the fighters. No one's taking out 30% like Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford gets 30% of his money taken out from his promoter, Bob Arum, 20 to 30%. And then on top of that, 8% gets taken away from his old promoter. And they weren't paying his old promoter. They got sued by the old promoter and they lost and they had to pay that man. And as long as Terrence Crawford has any titles, every single match he has to give 8% of his money to his old promoter. And I don't know why you would have signed a new contract without taking care of that. Bomac, you're the effing manager. You're supposed to take care of that situation, Bomac, where you pretty much like give them a lump sum before you sign this deal and it's done. You know, or have Top Rank take care of it because you only have to pay that 8% as long as you're with Top Rank. Bomac. But you as the manager didn't handle your business, Bomac. You know, so that's the thing when it comes to that particular situation. You know, so that's why they would be asking for those type of funds. Like Terrence Crawford and his team, they're not, a lot of these things, they're not even used to, you know, it even being brought in front of them. Because he's basically set up with the old fighter format, where he still gets what the regular fighters used to get, where he still might get a portion of the gate or a portion of the whatever, but I don't even know how that works with him, what actual portions he's actually getting when it comes to those things. I don't know, you know, but it's a situation where right now, the people, even with someone like Earl Spence, the people that are fighting Earl Spence are actually making more money at the end of the day now than Terrence Crawford is making. because of the way their setup is. They don't get jived and chipped the way most of these fighters get jived, because they have that Al Heyman. You know, the Al Heyman where when Terrence Crawford with his promoter couldn't get the fight with Manny Pacquiao done, as soon as Al Heyman was able to sign Manny Pacquiao, he was able to get that bout for Adrian Broner, and he was able to get that bout for Keith Thurman, and get Manny Pacquiao the money that he wanted for those fights. We don't hear PBC fighters screaming about, oh, I'm not taking any pay cuts. Oh, I'm not only going to get paid that. Oh, I'll sit out. We don't hear Fox, PBC, Showtime screaming about, oh, the money's low because of the pandemic. The money's just not there because of the pandemic. No, they're still putting up the money. Fox is still putting up the money. You know, these guys had great contracts. These guys had a great advisor, an Al Heyman, that made sure that even in situations like this, they were still straight and they were still going to make their money regardless. And that's why some of these fights are also being put on pay-per-view, because these guys are still getting paid the same amount, but they might want to see what they can get back as far as like with a Showtime, you know, through like the pay-per-view. Let's see what this little additional money we can generate, because we still got to pay these guys out this money here regardless. They're still getting paid big boy money. So we got to see. But they're still putting out the money regardless. If they take a loss, they take a loss. They're still going to pump it out. They're still putting out Rosario versus Charlo. They're still putting out Tank versus Santa Cruz on that side. They're still putting out, Jamal versus whatever the hell his name is, Derevyanchenko. They're still putting those out. You know, and Fox is still putting out, they put out half the lineup, and they still got another half of the lineup coming up as well, where they're still also putting out major events. They only put out half the lineup. They still got other major events coming up. And it's not an issue, because when it comes to these type of funds, they're used to this. It's nothing to them. Dealing with these kind of numbers is nothing to them. This is like normal. So Keith Thurman or Al Heyman seeing these type of numbers is normal. This is nothing abnormal to them. These numbers aren't large to them. But to somebody like a Terrence Crawford, to somebody like a Bomac, even somebody like a Bob Arum's not used to putting out numbers like that. He's not looking at it like, okay, this fight is worth this. He's looking at it as, this fight is worth this, but I can end up paying this mother effer only this. Or I can end up paying this mother effer only that, and I can bank the rest of it. That's what he's using to. He's looking at it like, damn, I'm not taking a pay cut. I'm not only making I'm not only gonna make $10 million off this fight instead of the 15. I'm not gonna pay them the X money. They're gonna have to take these pay cuts. You know what I'm saying? So these fights can get made. So I can still come off the way I'm used to coming off. Because at the end of the day, with them, they're worrying about them first. With PBC, with Al Heyman and them, they're worrying about the fighters first. They're like, we're gonna make our money regardless. We're gonna make our bread. So we're gonna make sure that you're straight. We don't need to tighten up all of this. We're putting out the big fights. We're getting the shoulder program and making money. We're getting the viewership is going good when it comes to the fights. And we're making more money when it comes to the pay-per-views. We're fine. We're good. So we're going to make sure you consistently are good too. You're going to be number one. You're going to be taken care of first. It's not like that on the other side. It's not like that when it comes to that, to Top Rank and how they do things. You know? So to them, it might be, quote, something foreign. But at the end of the day, these aren't fights that they wanted to do anyway. You know, Ugas was never sent a deal. Porter was never sent a deal. They actually, when they had a conversation, Crawford actually said, nah, we're good. I don't want to do this fight. We're not going to do that. You know, we're not going to do that right now. He never wanted that. Keith Thurman was never sent any offer. None of these guys were sent offers. You know, none of them. And it goes back to what Bomac said back on Tro a couple of years ago, and I never forgot what he said. And I've mentioned it about 1 million times. Why not make $3 million a fight fighting bums? That seems to be the plan. Like, subscribe, share. I'm out.